was December 2001. Enron's scandal had just come to light. The unethical practices exposed. You would have thought this would have struck fear into the hearts of all companies, but certain companies yet still decided to make unethical choices and illegal choices, such as Martha Stewart in this black deck labyrinth.
Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Jacob Acosta, and I am a part of HMJ Corporation. Tonight you will be seeing a presentation entitled Black Deck Labyrinth, the Martha Stewart Scandal by HMJ Corporation, including members Jacob Acosta, Charles Best, Hugo Flores, and Matthew Hobson. In this presentation, HMJ seeks to inform you, the viewers. We seek to present unbiased information, uphold integrity, and show the importance of market equality. HMJ Corporation would like to disclose before tonight's presentation that we are completely against these heinous acts. We seek to uphold fairness, equality, and justice for the marketplace and for the future of business. I believe that it is important to begin this presentation by looking at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Why should we look and start here? Because this scandal specifically has to do with insider trading. And which organization handles that? That is the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Securities and Exchange Commission was actually created through the 1934 Securities Exchange Act. It was, quote, an act to provide for the regulation of securities exchanges and of over-the-counter markets operating in interstate and foreign commerce and through the mails, to prevent inequitable and unfair practices on such exchanges and markets, and for other purposes, end quote. Through this act, the Securities and Exchanges Commission was created. I think the SEC's mission is greatly summed up in the 1998 speech titled A Question of Integrity, Promoting Investor Confidence by Fighting Insider Trading, given by Arthur Levitt, the chairman of the SEC.
We seek to renew our continuing dialogue with the legal community. We need to continue exchanging ideas about the best way to protect investors, to refine our approach to regulation, and to uphold the spirit of equal justice before the law. Professionals in the law are society's first line of defense. Your role is critical in upholding the highest standards of fairness in our marketplace.
If I were to ask one of you, what is the definition of insider trading? I would probably get only one definition. Something such as using material information to gain an edge on the market. And while that's true, and that is the illegal definition, insider trading also has a legal definition. And it's simply used when an officer, executive director, or someone who owns more than 10% in a company and their immediate family makes a trade of a stock that is registered under Section 12 of the SEC Act of 1934 regarding their company's own stock. In doing so, the trade, buying or selling, must be reported to the SEC. This is the legal definition. The illegal definition, and one more commonly known and quoted, is using material information that is given and is not public to make a decision to buy or sell stock.
Martha Stewart, she is a businesswoman and a media mogul. Here's a brief history of how she got started. In 1967, at the age of 26, she worked as a stockbroker for the boutique firm of Moniz, Williams & Seidel. She gained great success in 1982 when her book Entertaining came out. It was the best-selling cookbook at the time. In 1990, Martha Stewart's lifestyle living magazine came out, and she became the editor-in-chief. In 1993, Lifestyle magazine propelled her to television. Martha Stewart Living, Omnimedia. In 1997, she got her breakthrough success, where she became the CEO of Martha Stewart Living Omnimedia. Omnimedia became public in the New York Stock Exchange, making her an instant billionaire. It was in 1999 where her success was at the highest. Everything was perfect and was leading towards bigger and better things.
This scandal may be pointed directly at the figurehead Martha Stewart, but in actuality, there were three main players to this case.
Peter Bakonovic. He was a trader for Merrill Lynch, where both Martha Stewart and Sam Waxel were clients. Specifically, he was their broker.
Here's a brief history of ImClone Systems Incorporated. It was founded by Samuel D. Waxel. He founded ImClone Systems Incorporated in 1984, and its headquarters are in Bridgewater, New Jersey. ImClone Systems Incorporated is a pharmaceutical company that focuses on cancer treatment. Samuel Waxel went to school at Ohio State University, where he earned a doctorate. ImClone was traded on Nasdaq Stock Exchange under IMCL.
Now that we know who the key players were, let's take a look at some of the key events. On October 31st, 2001, ImClone Systems submitted an application to have its colon cancer drug approved by the FDA. On December 26, 2001, Sam had received information that the drug would be denied. He then transferred all of his stocks to his daughter, who he encouraged to sell all of her shares. The very next day, on December 27th, Martha would sell all of her ImClone shares, which was about 4,000 shares. On December 28, 2001, the drug was denied by the FDA. Soon after that, ImClone stock prices would begin to fall. On January 7th, Peter was questioned by the SEC, and on February 4th, Martha was questioned by the SEC. The questions were regarding the sale of their ImClone stocks and whether or not they had a sell-all order in place prior to the date of the sale. On June 12th, Sam was arrested and charged with insider trading. On June 4th of 2003, the SEC filed security and fraud charges against Martha and Peter. 6 days later, Sam would be sentenced to more than 7 years in prison. And the next year, on March 5th, Martha and Peter were both convicted.
So let's look at the rundown of this scandal. Sam Waxel got information that he would be receiving an RTF from the FDA. An RTF, a refusal to file, is not a denial of the drug itself, but is simply an incomplete application for the drug, and with an incomplete application, the drug would not make it to market. Knowing that would happen and knowing that shares prices would drop, Sam Waxel advised his daughter to sell all of her shares, transfer his shares so that she could sell his shares for him. The middleman in all of this, Peter Bakonovic, when he learned of the Waxels selling their shares of ImClone, he instructed his assistant, Doug Faneuil, to tell Martha Stewart that the Waxels were selling their shares of ImClone. So Martha Stewart was not aware of the RTF. She just knew that Waxel was selling all of his shares in his company. And she knew that something was up. So that's where the insider trading took place on her end, was knowing that the CEO of ImClone was selling his shares, who she had been a longtime friend of. and so she sold her shares. Sam Waxel's big fault in insider trading was that he took the information of the RTF and he used it because none of this information was public. Two sides to the same coin, both heinous and very unfair to any other investor because the information was non-public.
On October 15, 2002, Sam Waxel pled guilty to securities fraud, bank fraud, obstruction of justice, and perjury. He was fined $3 million for his crimes committed from the sale of his stock with non-publicly disclosed information. He was also fined $1.3 million for sales tax avoidance to the state of New York. In the end, he was also sentenced to 87 months in federal prison with 3 years supervision after his release. Next, we have Peter Bakonovic. On June 4, 2003, Mr. Bakonovic was charged with 9 criminal counts. He was later found guilty of lying about a stock sale, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. A couple years later, he and the SEC reached an agreement and was fined $510 for disgorgement from the commissions that he earned on the stock, plus prejudgment interest of $135. Fined a civil penalty of $75,000. His sentence was 5 months in prison with 2 years of probation, of which 5 months were home confinement. Lastly, we have Martha Stewart. On June 4, 2003, she was charged with 9 criminal counts, including securities fraud, obstruction of justice, conspiracy. She eventually pled not guilty to these crimes, but was ultimately found guilty. Her fine was $30,000 from the conviction, but later she settled her case with the SEC with a disgorgement of $45,673, plus prejudgment interest of $12,389. She was also fined a civil penalty of $139,019, 3 times the losses she avoided, which is the federal maximum they could give. She was also sentenced to 5 months in prison with 2 years of probation, of which she had 5 months of electronic monitoring. Also, as part of her settlement with the SEC, she was banned for 5 years from serving as the head of any public company. Also, with a limitation as serving as an officer or an employee of a public company, during which she was also prohibited from certain activities such as the financial reporting, financial disclosures, audits, SEC filings, and monitoring compliance with the federal security laws of her company. I'm clone stakeholders. The 3 main losers that I identified were employees, shareholders, and patients. I felt like the employees would be one of the major losers because of the fact that if the company went under, I Am Clone employees would lose their job. I also identified the shareholders because they stood to lose millions of dollars if the stock was never able to come back to the strength it was before the scandal had broke. Lastly, I chose patients.
The stakeholders in Bakonovic's side of the story was Bakonovic himself being a guilty party in the scandal. His illegal actions also brought in Doug Faneuil and the brokerage firm Merrill Lynch as stakeholders as well. Merrill Lynch quickly distanced themselves from Peter by firing him, which helped their company not lose any of their hard-fought reputation. And finally, we look at Martha Stewart and the stakeholders involved. As Martha Stewart is the figurehead of the whole scandal, though she is guilty, and so is the rest of the parties involved. Martha Stewart's stakeholders are much more broad. They include employees, the brand image, CBS's TV show, the magazine, consumers, partners, advertisers, and investors.
In conclusion, HMJ is a corporation that believes in ethics and honesty in the decisions made, and as a result would have not made any decisions to act upon the information. However, knowing the information, HMJ would have been ready to sell as soon as the information became publicly available to avoid losses, and would have continued to give additional documentation needed so that Erbitix could eventually make it to market, which it eventually did. So given hindsight, the right thing is not always the easiest thing to do and may result in losses, but the right thing is what keeps the integrity of business secure and must always be upheld.